welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on the show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Before I introduce my guest this week, I wanted to let you know about an exciting project that I'm currently working on. In a short while, I'll be launching the inaugural Landscape Photography World Awards, searching for the best landscape photography out there and showing it off to the world. I can't say too much more about it at this point, as there are still some details to sort out, but I've lined up some very well-respected judges and prizes that will be well worth the cost of entry. This is by way of a celebration of the first year of the podcast. I'm very happy to say the podcast audience is growing steadily, and I'd like to thank everyone who listens and follows LPW on social media. It's wonderful seeing feedback from many of you and how much you're enjoying these conversations. Anyway, on with the show. This time I'm talking to Drew Geraci about his amazing landscape images. Drew is a filmmaker, director of photography and owner of District 7 Media. He's a world-class time-lapse cinematographer, Sony Artisan of Imagery and Dell brand partner. Geraci is best known for the opening sequence of the House of Cards series on Netflix, alongside his work on West Side Story, working with Steven Speilberg. He's also worked with Red Bull, Topgolf, Cartie, NFL Network, XGames, Corona, Netflix, A&E, Apple and Nike. On top of all that, he also loves getting into nature and taking amazing landscape images, showing the environment without human intervention, as well as the built landscape. In our chat, he talks about what motivates him to keep making wonderful images, how he has pushed himself to bring the unseen into view, and how he transitioned from his military service to civilian life as a full-time photographer and filmmaker. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Drew. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
I'm doing great, Grant. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fantastic. It's start of a new week and really enjoying life at the moment. I just got back from a trip over to the UK for 8 weeks, which was absolutely marvellous.
Oh, fantastic. I'm jealous. I haven't been out of the US since last year, but I'm glad you're making your rounds. That's great.
Oh, it's my first trip out for a couple of years. 2019, I was over in Canada, I think was the last time I was out and about. So
beautiful Canada. Where'd you go?
Banff, Yellowknife.
I was just going to say that. I knew you were a Banff guy.
Calgary, Vancouver, stayed West Coast mostly, and up in the Northwest Territory. Went up to do a bit of the old aurora chasing in Yellowknife as well.
Yeah. Did you capture some good stuff?
Yes. Only got one night to do it, though. We were up there for 3 nights, and the first 2 nights first night was partly cloudy with a really, really weak aurora that lasted like 10 minutes.
That's unfortunate.
And then the second night was socked in with cloud. And the third night was looking pretty bleak because it had snowed all day and there was lots of cloud. And then about 1 in the morning, it just cleared up and the aurora started and went off, which was quite nice. It wasn't, it wasn't strength 10 or anything like that, but it was good enough.
Yeah, that's great. That's how it always works too. It's like the last day and the last hour, like the heavens opened up and out came, there's the aurora. Finally, you got it. But that's great.
It's never there when you want it.
Never there when you want it. Never. It's every production I've ever been on. So
enough about me. Talk to me about your story. What's the Drew?
My story. Geez, there's so much to this story. Well, I'm going to do the abridged version of, just my little backstory. But I worked in the military. I was in the U.S. Navy as a combat photographer and mass communication specialist for about 10 years. Working for both photo and video, producing, editing, doing everything and everything. It was fantastic. But I decided that I was going to take a leave of absence from the military service and kind of go out on my own and do some of my own stuff. And that's really when I started tinkering around with time-lapse and HDR time-lapse and other forms of kind of like specialty photography, as you might say. And this was way back in like 2010, 2011. So a lot of this stuff really wasn't mainstream at the time. Sure. So for me, it was brand new. For a lot of people, it was brand new. And, when you're putting out time-lapse videos like that, you're getting, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views because no one's ever seen it before.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what led me to my next endeavor, which was creating my own business, which I just celebrated my 10 years this month.
Well, congratulations.
Media. Thanks, man. It's been a whirlwind. But yeah, I've been doing 10 years doing second unit cinematography, time-lapse photography, high-speed aerials for TV and film and commercial advertising. Done a ton of feature movies, tons of TV series. And really it's been an awesome experience. And it's kind of led me to believe, like, where do I go next from this? Because I've gotten to work with people like David Fincher, Steven Spielberg, Alejandro Inarritu, and it's all of these people that I grew up loving, and I'm doing work with them. So it's just really phenomenal. I'm like, oh my God, I'm only 38. Where do I go from here? So it's kind of like trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. But life has been great, and a lot of the things that I'm doing now really just revolve around helping other people, doing a lot of education-based tutorials and things, so that I can share the knowledge that I've gained over the past 20 years and give it to others.
Yeah, fantastic. So what got you started? Was it the career in the Navy, or were you into photography before then?
I was always into photography and videography. Actually, I was much more into videography before photography. And when I was in high school, I took a couple independent video classes and ended up getting a full ride to college. And having to make the choice of, hey, do I go to college or do I take on a different challenge? And I ended up going to the Navy instead. So I was a young 17-year-old Drew joining the U.S. Navy as a photographer. And that's kind of where everything started. But, every year that I'm doing this, I get a much larger appreciation for the art. And I also get an appreciation for how much effort has to go into learning new things and staying fresh with things, because it's not something you learn overnight. It just takes massive amounts of time to really hone in on what you want to do and where you want to go. Because for me, video was my ultimate goal. But now I'm doing a lot of time-lapse photography and high-speed stuff. And with the time-lapse photography, it's all still-based photography. So you're creating photography and then transforming it into video. So it's something that I just love to do. And I've become sort of a pro at it. Without tooting my own horn, I've mastered the workflow process of it, and have really done a lot of legwork to make it as perfect as can be. So, when we get those high-end cinema directors and whatnot, we can deliver a really great product.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I guess I want to touch a little bit on the why for a few of those things. What is it that really motivates you creatively?
Creatively, it's a really hard thing. I never really grew up idolizing any one photographer or any one director or whomever, because I really always wanted to create my own art. And when I was in school, one of the biggest things was I didn't really want to replicate or emulate anyone else, because I wanted it to be my own. So it's been a learning process for what I've done, and everything that I've done has just been basically on my own in a trial and error kind of system. So that's what kind of really motivates me to continue doing what I'm doing, because I love to push the limits. I love to go out there and challenge myself and say, hey, what has been done, what hasn't been done, how can I do it better? And how can I put myself in a position that I can leverage the work that I'm doing so I can get paid at the same time? Because one thing in this industry is you can be creative and you can create content, but if you're not monetizing that content, you're just going to be a poor artist. And unfortunately, in today's society, you can't really do both. So
that's right.
I think I found a cheeky little way to get paid and also have a lot of fun.
That's nice. Yeah. So what's your approach to, I guess, particularly landscape photography as it relates to experience recording versus trying to do something artistic? So, how do you take something from being, okay, well, here's a nice scene of some mountains and a stream or whatever, to being, something that's, that next level?
Well, I think it all obviously revolves around capturing those moments that you normally wouldn't see. So if you have this grand vista landscape, it can be beautiful during the day, but what happens at night, or what happens in the early morning as that light's creeping up and that shadow and the sun is peering over the sky, and, all this light's cascading across everything. Those are the things that I really look for. And I try to find unique ways to, kind of utilize that for my time-lapse photography, and just for my regular photography as well. But it's really just about going out there and trying to find different perspectives. As any photographer will ever tell you, it's all about perspective and it's about lighting. But it's true. It really is about lighting and perspective. And sometimes you have to get low, sometimes you have to get high, sometimes you have to, get in the tree and do whatever you want. But it's really about finding those unique locations and unique setups that really sell the shot and can really convey grandeur and the message that you want to project to your audience.
Yeah. So are you going into the field with a concept of what it is that you're trying to capture, or do you tend to react to what's going on around you and the light and whatever? So is
That's
it more
a question, Grant? Jeez,
yeah, I know. Is it planning and
I mean, there's always planning with everything I do. I mean, that's the one thing I've learned just starting off, is that everything requires a tremendous amount of planning. Even if you think it's going to be the simplest of shots, it really does require quite a lot of planning. So, pardon me, I'll always approach something with a plan in mind. I'll have like an objective, like, oh, I want to try to get this or that. But then at the same time, I'll always keep my eye open for something else that might be happening, because that light could change in just a special way where it's, lighting up an object that I never thought about it was going to light up or something, and then switching positions and then shooting that instead. Yeah. And I would definitely say for anything that's like commercialized, of course, I have a plan. I've got a whole storyboard laid out. I've got what I'm trying to achieve, what I will achieve. And
usually in the commercial you're getting told what to shoot to a certain
you're getting told
extent.
what to shoot. But in those instances, I just got off a project working with Disney, and I had that creative freedom where they're like, hey, we don't have a shot list, we don't have anything. Wow, we just want you to go out there and create beautiful art. And I was like, this sounds fantastic. So it really made for a much more pleasurable project. And I think those are probably my favorite when it comes to those kinds of projects, is where I get creative freedom to do what I want. But at the same time, it's also pretty rewarding to be able to do like a scene by scene shot based scripted project as well. So I can't complain either way.
How do you deal with disappointment, I guess, when you're under time pressure and on those commercial shoots, somebody's saying, I need this shot, and they're asking for sun when the fog's just rolled in. How do you deal with that? Let me tell you something.
Yeah, as any photographer knows, there's always disappointment, and you could shoot everything perfectly, have everything set up the way that you thought it was going to happen, and then the weather changes. And that's one thing that I think you really have to be able to pivot around as well, and have backups, because in this industry, it happens all the time, especially when you're shooting commercials or film and TV. You are given the time that you're given, and most producers and productions don't want to pay for the extra time where you would, you'd be like, oh my gosh, if we just had an extra hour here, we could create even more magic. Or if we wait a day and push it, we'll have the perfect weather. But you just kind of have to take it as the ebb and flow, and just do what you can. And in most instances, though, I will say that 99% of the time, even if the weather looks like it's awful, the shot still turns out really well. And we'll throw on, or I'll throw on my own little special like pizzazz to make it look even better. And they'll be like, oh wow, that's great. Filters do an amazing job, but
fair enough. I guess, talking about that special pizzazz, you've got a fairly defined style. How did that develop over time? And is it still developing?
Oh my God, the style is always developing. And I think that's kind of what sets me apart from a lot of other time-lapse photographers and just other cinematographers out there as well. Because for me, it's about, capturing that light, capturing that subject in the moment in camera. But then the real magic is when you take it back to post and you really put on your own touch of color, your own touch of, lights, darks, midtones, and really, give it shape. And that's what I love about this industry, is because you can create something that looks completely different in camera from what you create in post. Mm-hmm. And, but it's having that forethought of knowing, hey, I know that I can push the highlights or I can push the midtones here. And when I bring it back into post, it's going to look absolutely amazing. And all of those things correlate together to create a perfect image. And in my instance, that's just kind of my style. I'm definitely, I love color. I love vibrancy. I love, really immersing the user in color. And I don't do a lot of dull things. Most of my stuff is very vivid. And that's what I love to do.
Yeah, cool. So talk to me a bit about leaving the Navy and making the choice to go full time and head out on your own in your own business, was that an easy decision, or was it something that you
Oh, hell
sort of
yeah. It
came
was
to
a
over time?
super easy decision.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, they wanted me to stick around. They're like, oh, we're going to pay you money to stay around because you're a valuable asset. And I'm like, yeah, piss off. I'm done. One of the biggest reasons why I left the Navy and the military in general is just because people are always in leadership positions above you, obviously, but they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So they'll task you with something and they'll be like, oh, you got to go do this and you have to do it in this amount of time. And you sit there and you're like, this isn't even possible. Like, what are you guys like talking about? This is complete bullshit. And then you tell them it's complete bullshit. And then they come back to you and like, oh, no, it's possible. I've seen you do it. And I'm like, the hell you have. So I just didn't want to be put in a position where somebody who was a mindless drone and also an idiot was in charge of me, telling me what to do, how to do my job when they didn't even know what the fuck they were talking about. So as you can tell, I'm a little passionate. I will say I love the military and I love the Navy and I love everyone I've ever met in the Navy, but I really despise the leadership and the way that it's set up because it's not meant for creatives. It's not meant for people that are vocal and are good at what they do. In all honesty, it's about
there's a lot of black and white.
Yeah, there's a lot of black and white. So, and I was like a nice big red stain on that black and white. So it was great, but I didn't really have any loss or feeling of loss after leaving the Navy. And it was really quite honestly a relief getting into the civilian world and starting to do what I wanted to do and put out the projects that I wanted to put out. And I think it's worked out really well.
Yeah. So when you say you wanted to start working on projects of your own, was that the main goal that drove you towards setting up your own business, or was it something other than needing to eat?
Just to be blunt, I mean, it was survival. So I was working at a newspaper at the time after I got out of the military, and I got a really decent job. I was a multimedia director for the Washington Times, and I did that for 3 years, and then they laid off the entire staff. And then I was like, oh, what am I going to do? But thankfully, being the resourceful person that I am, I started my business about a year into my working at the paper because I could see the writing on the wall. I knew that it wasn't going to be long until they were going to like lay off staff. And I was like, you know what? I want to have like a little safety net here. So I started my business. I was running my business part-time, obviously, whenever my off time was from work, and doing it there. And then in 2012, I took it full-time. And it was a very terrifying experience because I'm like, oh, I'm relying on myself to make money, relying on myself to do marketing, editing, post-production, anything and everything. And it was really challenging. And there's a lot of things that I really fucked up along the way and lost a lot of money. It has taught me quite a lot, though, as being a small business owner of, what to do and what not to do. So I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things I like to do is explore the how when it comes to setting up your own business and so forth. What are those important things that need to be taken care of, and what are the things that you can just sort of go, yeah, it doesn't matter that much. I shouldn't be concentrating on that.
I mean, the biggest thing for starting your small business is just knowing the legalities of everything, knowing the tax laws, because honestly, that has been the biggest thorn in my side is just understanding tax laws. And when I first started doing it, I didn't understand certain ways that my money had to be in certain places and I couldn't spend certain things, had to do estimated taxes every quarter and whatnot. And I just didn't do them appropriately, but I also wasn't filing appropriately either because I was filing as an LLC, but it was personal. So I wasn't doing like an S Corp or a C Corp or anything.
Yeah, so it was a sole trader business.
Yeah. And I was losing probably close to $40,000 or $50,000 a year just in like Social Security and Medicaid, Medicare. And then I got the smart idea from my accountant. He's like, you should really change over to an S Corp. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds great. So I did that and I ended up saving about $30,000 or $40,000 a year. Nice. And that was a huge deal for me, but it's also, understanding the copyright laws as well, making sure you have everything trademarked that's yours. And then also securing, web addresses, things that, I wouldn't really think about in the past. I'm like, oh, you know what? If I'm going to create a business, it needs to have a website, and that website needs to have a direct name that can be, .com. So, And funny enough, for my business, it took me 7 years, not 7 years, sorry. It took me about 5 years to get
Wow.
district7.com. And I bought it off of a company that had been hoarding it since 2003. They wanted me to pay like $50,000 for the name. And they contacted me. And every year they contacted me, I told them the same thing. I'm like, listen, my max price is $1,500. Come back to me. I'll make it happen. After like 3 or 4 years of them coming back to me, hey, you interested in District 7? I'm like, sure, $1,500. And finally, they came back and they're like, okay, $1,500. And I was like, great, we got a deal.
Fantastic.
So I got my web address. I felt happy. And then, yeah, but there's also, you know, everything that comes with insurance as well. You just have to understand production insurance, equipment insurance, workman's comp, setting up payroll. And once you get there, you just feel like, oh shit, I'm a legitimate business now. Like, you're just like doing everything, hiring people. And it's crazy, but yeah, that's pretty much my, I guess, insight to owning a small business.
Sure. How did you balance being all things, though? You know, dealing with, you know, building your social media brand and marketing, and, you know, doing the actual photography and doing the editing, and, you know, and getting out, getting clients, etc. You know, that's a big juggling act.
It's a huge juggling act. And I'm going to be honest, it's always been me. I've never hired anyone else to do anything else. I run my own website. I do the photography. I do the video. I do the editing, post-production. I'll hire out for crew members. So if I need to have audio and secondary shooters and gaffers and grips and things like that, I'll hire out for that.
Sure.
You know, I've taken care of everything since day one. And, you know, 10 years in, I can definitely say, like, I'm glad that I've done it. But now I'm at that point where I'm like, I'm probably going to hire some people to do this because
Sure.
It takes way too much time and effort. I work probably 20 hours a day.
I was going to say, it sounds like you don't sleep.
I don't. I'm up every morning at like 6 o'clock. I go to bed. I'm like an old man. I go to bed at like 9 p.m. And, you know, I start my day and just keep it going until it needs to end. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
So you've shot all over the world. What locations are still on your bucket list?
Oh my God. You know, this is the weirdest thing. I've never been to Hawaii.
Wow.
And,
okay. Yeah.
I've been at some of the most obscure places all over the world, but, you know, I've never been to Hawaii. So I'd like to go visit Hawaii. Love to visit the Azores, and probably, oh my God, where is it? What's the desert in South America, Northern Handle? It starts with a B. Oh my God, I'm losing it.
I can't remember.
It's wherever it is. It's where they have all the reflections in the sand. Colby Brown was just there.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. That's where I'd like to go to. I love reflections. I love sand, and I love doing nighttime photography. So I'd love to go out there.
Yeah, sounds good. What's the furthest you've traveled to get the shot?
As far as like a production travel, or like actually
either.
I trekked 10 miles into the Grand Canyon to get some shots of Havasupai Falls in Arizona. And that was a grueling trip, and I will never do it again because I was carrying about 70 pounds of gear in 110 degree heat, or whatever that is, like 40 degrees Celsius heat. And it was brutal, and it was crazy. And the next thing, as far as flights go, I did not a nonstop, but I did a flight from here to Western China, out near Mongolia. And that was about a 36-hour flight. And
wow.
That was a pretty crazy flight. The longest flight I've ever done, though, was to a small island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, Diego Garcia. And that took 2.5 days to get to. And that was while I was in the military, but it was also a fantastic place to photograph and to document. And it's probably one of those places that you'll never be able to get back to, but it's absolutely gorgeous. Like white sand beaches, turtles, dolphins. It's freaking amazing. So, yeah.
Oh, nice. Nice. I guess one of the big things that's happened in the last couple of years is the pandemic. And how's that sort of changed for your business, or changed the way that you do business? And how's it changed your attitude towards traveling and photography?
Yeah, I mean, COVID-19 really screwed some stuff up. So, you know, it was really funny going into 2020. It was going to be our record year for contracts. We had over $1 million worth of pre-approved contracts. And literally whatever, 2 months into 2020, we lost everything. And for 2020 and 2021, I think I had a combined income of a little over like $10,000 for 2 years. And it was really detrimental to the business. And it was pretty scary thinking about what was going to happen after that. But I decided to pivot towards doing more YouTube stuff, creating more YouTube content, doing more social media. And that's actually proved to be a pretty viable economic stream, at least for some smaller stuff. And if I could spend more time on it, it'd be great. But literally at the beginning or the end of 2021 in November, I just started getting a ton of calls for productions for 4 or 5 different movies, TV shows, and then doing a lot of stuff with Sony. And it's literally been nonstop since November. This is I'm like literally, as you can tell, it took us whatever 2 or 3 months just to get this thing, this podcast out. So I appreciate your patience doing that. But it's been a crazy year.
Yeah, it sounds it. What's the most memorable experience you've had while you're out shooting?
No idea. I'm gonna be honest with you. They're all memorable experiences. I think for me, the biggest experience that I can remember is honestly the food, because I'm a big foodie. And there's always different places. I just love, investigating different cultures, trying different things that are culturally diverse from, what I have here in the States. And I think those moments are the ones that I remember the most. But I think if there's any kind of one photography thing that's ever happened, I honestly couldn't answer it because there's so many. there's from being able to like get on top of the Washington Bridge in New York City and, shoot the entire New York City landscape with literally 2 inches of steel underneath your feet that you can see the cars whizzing by below. And you're up there for like 3 or 4 hours shooting was crazy and incredible at the same time. And getting to go a lot of different places. I think some of my most memorable things, and they maybe not in a positive, but they turned out to be positive, was when I was out in China for the first time, because we had spent, 33, 34 hours on a plane. We literally get off the plane in Western China. And as soon as we step off the plane, there's this old, probably like 80, 90-year-old woman. And she's literally, defecating out in the streets. And we're like, oh, this is going to be a memorable shoot. So there's a lot of crazy things, especially when our first trip to China. And funny enough, I never really wanted to go back after that because I'm like, whoa, there's so many bad things here. I'm never going to do that. And I literally said, if anyone ever asked me to go back to China to do something, I'm going to, just go crazy with my prices and, make sure everything is first class and 5 stars and whatever.
Somebody agreed.
Yeah, literally, I'm not even joking. Like literally a month after I got back from China, so another Chinese production company contacted me and I was like, okay, here, it's going to be X amount of dollars, like some exorbitant amount of money and, first class tickets and everything. And they're like, yeah, no problem. That sounds great. I'm like, shit.
I've got to go.
I got to go. And I ended up going, and it was probably one of the best trips I've ever been on and super memorable. Like, I've never been to Shanghai before and getting to, I love cityscapes. It's probably one of my favorite things to shoot, and getting first class VIP around Shanghai, because this was going to be for the Chinese government. Basically, we had access to anything and everything. And you want to go up on top of that building? No problem. 5 minutes. We're up on top of that building. And it was a really crazy, amazing experience. One that I probably won't see for quite some time now, given the political state of things. So
yeah, it could be a while.
It could be a while. So we'll see what happens. But that was definitely a really fun experience. One that I always remember.
Yeah. So in terms of where you live, how has that influenced how you shoot or what you shoot?
I say where I live has influenced me in the sense that I have become known as a very great DC photographer and cinematographer. So a lot of production companies already know me by name because I've worked on a lot of shows that are all DC based.
Yep.
So that is very, helpful and fortunate at the same time, because people are like, oh, hey, we need somebody to go out and shoot X, Y, and Z downtown Washington. No problem. I'm on it. And it's really afforded me a lot of opportunities to work with a lot of different post-production houses and just production units in general. Sure. But a lot of my work really doesn't even revolve around DC. Usually it's out of state or out of country. And I think it's one of the things I love about this job is it can take you anywhere and you can see anything at any time. And it's just a really fun adventure.
Yeah, nice. What about horror stories? have you had anything that's been memorable in a bad way? And I don't want to bring back any post-traumatic stress, but
Yeah. I think I actually got some PTSD from this shoot, but it was funny enough, another Chinese shoot. So I should say I've been to China probably a dozen times and spent over a year and a half there probably. And I absolutely love it. But it also comes down to the people that you're with and the crew that you're working with, because they also make or break it. And in one experience, I'm not going to name production companies or anything like that, we had a producer and a director that literally had no idea what they were doing. They had us working probably 22 hours a day, every day for 30 days straight. And basically the crew kind of revolted on them and told them, hey, you got to cut this shit out. We can't do these long hours. It's not, we're losing sleep. We can't even function properly. And I remember telling them, I'm like, listen, even in our contract, it states that we do 10-hour days, 12 hours at the most with overtime. And we were doing, 20, 22-hour days. And we all submitted our bills for the client at the end, and they were inflated by like 10 times. So a $500,000 production turns out to be almost a $2 million production because they wouldn't listen to us and give us, the time that we needed to recuperate, basically. Yeah. And they were upset and they paid it though. Yeah. So that was probably one of the worst shoots I've ever been on though. And thankfully I would say 98% of all my other shoots have been fantastic. Like there's really never been like a really bad shoot in my opinion, except for that one.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite location that you just keep getting called back to? And what New is Zealand. It? Why is that?
100%. I don't even, you don't have to finish your sentence. I love New Zealand and I wish I lived there. I wish I was a citizen. It's just, it's where I want to be. But I love New Zealand because it just contains anything and everything you've ever wanted to photograph. Sure. And I love visiting the South Island because you get deserts, you get glaciers, you get tropical rainforests, you get forests, you get everything. And it's freaking amazing. Yeah. And it's something that you don't see in the States really. I think the closest thing we have up here really is, Banff. Has some of the elements of New Zealand, and maybe Iceland, but those are all completely different as terms of like feel go. But I just love New Zealand. Like that's where I want to be. Like my soul is like, it just wants to be in New Zealand. So
yeah, I don't blame you. I'm a little bit the same.
Yeah. I mean, you get pretty cheap flights there, right?
Well, relatively, and technically, I think I can go over there and work as well, which is nice.
Can you? Oh my God!
Australia and New Zealand have kind of this reciprocal special visa arrangement where you can just. Yeah. So there's quite a lot of Kiwis living over here and working. Sure. It used to be a bit of a joke actually about Bondi, Bondi Beach.
Yeah.
Here in Sydney that 90% of the population was from New Zealand.
From New Zealand.
There was a joke at the end with can the last Kiwi to leave turn the lights out?
Yeah, that's funny.
But I think there's a lot of Aussies going back over to in the other direction though, simply because now particularly post-pandemic, a lot of people are going, well, hey, I can actually work anywhere and work from anywhere, and if I'm going to choose a lifestyle place to go, New Zealand.
Why not? Yeah, New Zealand is the place to be, man. If it was
fantastic wine and food, fantastic.
Oh my God, it's fantastic everything. There's nothing wrong that New Zealand does.
No carnivorous animals or poisonous.
Nothing.
Snakes.
That's what's great. Yeah, like you got some like bugs that or I forget like flies that bite you. That's about it.
Yeah, that's the worst.
It's not bad. The only thing I wish this would make New Zealand the perfect country. If they just legalized marijuana, it would be the best country in the world.
Yeah, maybe they will. Maybe
they will. Oh my gosh, I was trying so hard to get not citizenship, but we wanted to buy a house down there, and this was in 2017, and in 2018 they put out the statement saying no foreign owners anymore, and I was like, shit. So there goes my chance of like owning a property in New Zealand, but I don't know.
You've never heard of shelf companies?
I know, right? I got a couple friends down there. We're kind of in the works of doing some stuff. So we'll see what happens.
Oh, that's the way. Yeah. Never give up.
No, I won't. Believe me. If I can move to New Zealand, I will.
So what do you learn about the world through photography?
Everything. I mean, that's a really hard question. I mean, I've learned quite a lot through
That's why I asked
photography.
it.
I think it's really, honestly, photography isn't really about imagery to me. It's about creating and fostering relationships with other people,
Hmm.
going out there and really learning about what other people do, and then taking the information and the styles and the things that they do and kind of not replicating it, but figuring out how it can like mix into your own work, and really just kind of ping ponging ideas off of people. And I think that's what photography is great for, because it's unique. No one will ever be named the greatest photographer in the world, because there's no way to determine who the greatest photographer in the world is.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's what makes it amazing, because everything is unique, everything is customized for every person. So
Mm,
it's one of the
yeah.
reasons I love photography.
Yeah, I think, people's reaction to it is, positive or negative, is
Right.
always going to be different, because different people see the world in different ways. And,
Absolutely. Yeah.
particularly when it comes to landscape, cityscapes, street, and astro and those sorts of
Yeah.
things, it's going to evoke very different feelings depending on that person's experience. Yeah,
Yeah. And that's what's great about it too, is because it
absolutely.
is everything and anything.
So I want to move on to some of the how, and talk a little bit about particular things that you do that might be a bit different. You mentioned the Drew's special sauce or whatever. What, without giving secrets away. What are some of those ingredients to the special sauce?
Well, I mean, I think the special sauce for me really comes down to a lot of different things. And it comes down to me, in the first part is hardware. I'm a huge computer nerd, data nerd. I've got about 1.6 petabytes of server space that I have all of my imagery on. I've got two cats down here that are whining at me right now. And I also love building computers and, learning new things about different softwares and whatnot. And I think one of the biggest things that I think has been an advantage for me is just, sorry about that, my cat. Come here, Phil. One of the biggest things for me is just finding new workflows that help enhance my art, and whether that is learning a new program or actively going out and creating my own kind of setup for things. It's kind of really what separates me, I think, from a lot of other people, because I think there's a lot of great photographers out there, but there may not necessarily be a lot of photographers that know the ins and the outs of the post-production side as well, when
Yeah.
it comes to finalizing and really coming up with that perfect final image for distribution. And for me, really, for when it comes to even photography, I use DaVinci Resolve, and I was a big Adobe
Right.
user for a long time.
Mhm.
And I really like Adobe. They have wonderful people, but they're not keeping up with their software. They're not keeping up with current trends, and they're really just falling behind, in my opinion. So I've really moved on to other software that really works well for my workflow. And one of the things I've really been doing a lot lately is just 8K and larger resolution cinematography and photography. I just worked on a project where we're doing 24K
Wow.
projects with medium format cameras and,
Yep.
multi-faceted shoots. Hey, Phil. And all those things really add up to, what you can create and come up with. And I don't know if my special sauce really is just, I love looking at the color charts and my color levels, and really
Mm-hmm.
making sure that they align properly. And I'm a huge proponent of having the highest quality image possible. So I always want to shoot things at their highest bit rate, and
Yep.
really retain all that beautiful information. Cat, and just go from there.
Cool. What's your routine out in the field? Are you, non-commercial? Let's talk about personal photography.
Just personal photography. Okay, perfect. Yeah,
Because
I mean,
your routine in a commercial shoot's always going to be a little bit.
yeah, there's always something like wonky, but
Yeah.
it's really funny and probably sad at the same time. I don't go out as often as I used to for like personal photography, just because
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't had time to do it because of
Sure,
commercial
sure.
photography. But when I do go out there, I really like to, just be one with the landscape, be one with whatever area that I'm in, really kind of observe it for a while and see what's coming up and what's, happening. And then kind of dive in and be like, ooh, this would be a cool shot over here. And,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'll switch out to this lens and do this or that. So I don't really have a routine other than I just like to scope out the area first,
Yep.
and really kind of find out, what I can create with it.
Yep. What about pre-planning? Are you spending a couple of hours, a couple of days? What
Yeah,
kind
that
of
completely depends on the project. I mean, pre-planning for personal stuff is, I'll do it up in the moment, but a lot of the production stuff that I do, days, if not weeks of pre-planning and going back and ensuring the light's there, doing light studies, and making sure that it's acceptable for what the client wants. So that does take a considerable amount of time. And I actually enjoy it though, because it allows me to see those things that, I know are going to work, and also allows me to see those things that I know won't work.
Sure.
So I can relay that back to the client.
Yeah. Have you ever hit a creative wall?
Yeah, every time. I mean, like every day, it's a creative wall. You got to find a way to climb over it. One of my biggest inspirations right now is working with AI generated imagery. And I've been doing that for the last month or so, and it's been a huge inspiration boost. Because realistically, what I'm doing is I'm telling the computer what I want to depict in the scene, and the computer then takes that word, uses that language to create the image. And some of the results that I've gotten from it are just out of this world. And I would say on par, they're pretty much almost identical to, not identical, but very similar to what I was thinking about in my head. So it really allows me to do a lot of great pre-visualization. I can share that with clients and say, hey, we can get something similar to this, or even, copy this, and then get an actual photo doing that. But that's one of the biggest inspirations to me that I've come across in the last couple of months or so.
Okay. Where do you see things like AI going, and how far do you think that's actually going to eat into the professional photography world, particularly cinematography? There's a lot of CGI being used in the past, and I know there's been I guess quite a few conversations in the media, at least, about replacing actors and replacing cinematographers with CGI and AI.
I don't think we'll ever replace cinematographers, but we will replace actors. But AI is 100% going to be in our future when it comes to image generation for still photography and for cinematography.
Sure.
Just because even the point that we're at now, it looks amazing, and I can't imagine seeing what happens when they actually dial it in and get it so it's photorealistic and you can't tell the difference between a camera and the AI generated imagery. And it's coming. I'll say that in the next 5 to 6 years, we will have that. And I think all photographers and cinematographers, they have to be ready for that, because I don't necessarily think it's going to replace anybody, but I think it's going to make your job either more difficult, or it's going to throw some, corkscrews or whatever into your in your workflow, because it's going to be one of those things that is going to dominate the industry, because A, it's cheap, and B, anybody can do it. It doesn't require any talent whatsoever to do it. So I think there's reason to be a little, I don't think scared is the right word, but apprehensive for the technology. But I think it could also lead to, a lot of really wonderful things, because, just as I was saying before, for pre-visualization, for storyboarding, if you can tell the AI what you think you'd like to make, and it comes up with something that it's randomly generated, you can then piggyback off of that and actually create those scenes in greater detail and more depth. And I think that's an amazing achievement, and I really honestly can't wait for that.
Okay. How do you see that fitting into things like social media and Instagram? Because if you get an AI account that's generating,
Grant, we're already there. I mean, there's plenty of bots out there that are all AI generated. There's plenty of forms that are and text and everything that's AI generated, and someone's just like, hey, go start a fight with this person using this context, and you tell the bot to go do it, and it does it. And that's the scariest aspect of it, is because you don't know who is real or what is real on social media. And it tricks and fools a lot of simple-minded people, as I would say, unfortunately. And that can lead to a lot of detrimental things, especially politically and in your community. And I think it's one of those things we really have to be careful about. So I kind of honestly hope they do rid or put in policies or something to prevent that from, escalating to something, catastrophic.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I was less thinking about some of the tech stuff, but that's out there now, but more if you've got a AI image generator that is set up to match the algorithm and what's going to trend on social media, and it's pumping, that kind of content out, then how does a human compete against that? I mean, you'd have to ask to what end. But,
yeah. I mean, that's a great question, and one that will probably be answered very shortly. Whether it's with applause or by grumbles and, middle fingers. And I think it depends on where you're at and who you're marketing. I think there's always going to be a need for photography and cinematography as it stands and, relates to real people. But I think there's also room for AI too, because you can create cheap imagery doing that. And it looks really good so far, which is, terrifying.
I guess for me, I kind of see art more as a human pursuit. And
for sure,
I know that at some stage we'll probably have to bend the knee to our robot overlords, but
100%. I mean, every movie we've ever produced about AI taking over the world will literally happen. And realistically, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but we probably are living in a simulation right now, whereas AI is controlling everything that we do, hear, see, smell, everything.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of credibility to it too, that's where we've happened. Because if you think about it, what kind of civilization is going to last the longest in the universe? It's not going to be a flesh-based system, because it deteriorates. It's going to be metal. And honestly, AI is one of those everlasting, eternal kind of setups. And I think if we were ever to do space exploration, it's going to be AI that goes out there and does it for us. And I think essentially that AI is going to become human, and or the sense of human, as far as, having a conscience and having free thinking. But I think humans as we are now, we're not going to exist in the next 200 to 300 years. I can honestly see that happening.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you see within that 200 to 300 years? What do you see as the biggest challenge facing photographers right now?
I hate to say it, but it's climate change. I mean, the biggest thing for photography is, I just had a couple production shoots, that we were planning on doing out, Yellowstone, and Yellowstone just had the giant floods, and now the whole area is closed indefinitely until they get the roads fixed. And that's a direct impact of climate change. And that's what we're going to start seeing around the world, in my opinion, are a lot of catastrophic events that are going to, obviously displace people, but also halt productions, stop you from your vacation, stop you from going out there and producing stuff, because the landscape is physically changing right in front of our eyes. And I think if we don't do something to counteract that, then not just photographers are going to be in trouble, the whole world's going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I think we're already seeing that, definitely. Some of the footage recently of incidents in Italy with, glaciers letting go.
Sure.
And, both creating the initial avalanche, but also, the fact that glacier now is a much shorter, therefore there's a lot less cooling going on in that area, because
it's about to get hot.
that ice isn't there, so. Yeah.
No, I feel it. And aren't you guys getting like crazy flooding?
We have had crazy rain. Back in March, we had an entire year's rainfall, average rainfall by March. And then in the last week or so, we did get a bit of respite for a little while. But we've had locations here that have had a 1 in 100 year flood, as they call it, 4 times in the last 2 years.
I guess that's 400 years of flooding. All right, great. That's
pretty much, yeah. So it's been very, very wet. It's a real problem, and I totally agree that it's probably one of the biggest challenges facing mankind, let alone photography. It's something that I think as photographers we've kind of got a bit of a responsibility to show people what's going on, and hopefully
1,000%. Yeah,
something will get done about it. It's really got to be. Yeah, well, I heard someone describe it. If this was a war, right, our governments would be putting 110% behind fighting it.
For sure. If they could figure out a way to monetize it, they would make it happen.
Absolutely.
Like it's the most ridiculous thing. It's like, oh, we're going to die here because we don't have enough, oxygen or water or whatever.
Yep.
Like, yeah, it's okay, whatever. But the minute there's like, oh, there's oil over in this country, let's go over there and give them their freedom so we can get their oil. It's the stupidest fucking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, if it is one way that we could actually reverse, as we stand now, it is reversible. But
right, it is.
It would actually take that kind of war footing for governments to say, okay, we're actually going to combat climate change in a realistic manner, and we're going to put the kind of industrial effort that we put into fighting one another into actually reversing climate change.
I wish that was a thing, because that seems that's happening over here, man. It's like people fighting each other over the stupidest fucking things.
Yeah, he said, she said, and it's like,
it's awful.
Why are you arguing about that when we're all going to die?
Right, exactly. So fun topic.
yeah. Well, let's pull ourselves out of that a little bit. What do you like to do when you're not out shooting?
Man, I play video games. I'm going to be honest. Okay. I love video games. I always grew up playing them. I used to play quite a bit with Colby Brown. I think you guys chatted before. So him and I play. And it's really honestly just a great stress reliever, because I can zone out, go straight into whatever world or event that I'm playing, and I don't really have to think about anything else. And it's really awesome. But aside from that, I'm really into growing things. I think in another life, or even in this life, who knows, I'd want to be a farmer or a horticulturist, and, develop things.
Well, you've answered my next question, which was, if you weren't a photographer, what would you be? So.
Yeah, well, funny enough, before I wanted to go into photography and videography, I wanted to be an architect.
Okay.
And, I love architecture, and it's probably one of my favorite things to photograph. But I also love building, and I love designing. So that definitely would have been either my second or third choice. But I enjoy working with my hands too. So I think working on a farm would be pretty awesome too.
Sure. Who do you go to for advice?
Oh man, this is going to sound dickish. I don't really go to anybody for advice.
That's okay.
Yeah. I mean,
some people do, some people don't.
I don't know if that sounds pompous or something. Like there's other photographers that I'll talk about, but I'll honestly do my due diligence and research a lot of stuff on my own. And then make up my own opinion based on that, or make my own assessment, I should say.
I don't think there should be any shame in self-reliance. If you, if you're comfortable making your own decisions without asking for advice, then that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So are there any other photographers out there that you think I should be talking to?
Yes, there are two photographers in particular that I think you guys should be talking to, or you should be talking to. The first one, and I will talk, I really don't know how to say her name. Her name is Nicole Skisorski.
Okay.
Sikorski. And she is a fitness photographer. And I've kind of seen her journey over the past 2 years go from, just a simple camera and a lens to like full lighting setups and everything. And she does an incredible job. And I think she's probably an amazing up and comer. And she does a really great job. And the next one is Pablo Piedra, Piedra. And he's a macro photographer, but he does a lot of insect stuff. So he does focus stacking or image stacking with images, but then also animates them as well. And it's probably one of the coolest things I've seen. And he does an incredible job at it. He's also a former, I think, Army or Air Force guy. And he's doing this down in Costa Rica. He's got a whole studio he just started up for himself. And he's, making a big name for himself. And I'm really proud of him. And he's doing a lot of wonderful things. So if you get a chance to talk with him, I would definitely suggest it.
All right. Thanks for that. I've got one more question. And for some who listen, it's probably the most important one. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Funny enough, I like pineapple on pizza. It's fine. It's during my stints over in China, there were little pockets of pizza parlors, and by pizza parlors I mean Pizza Hut. And
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever been over there to Pizza Hut in China, but it's like it's a 5-star dining restaurant compared to like the 1-star that it is in the state. And the best pizza they have there is a pineapple pizza. And it is absolutely delicious. And I'm not ashamed to say it. So you know what? Screw it, you know.
All power to you.
That's right. Pineapple's not for everybody on their pizza, but I'll tell you what, I don't mind it. It's okay.
I haven't done the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it's fairly equal. There's a few neutrals. I'm a neutral. If it's there, I'll eat it. If it's not on the pizza, I'm happy. If I order one,
I'll go with that too. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to actively go out there and search for pineapple on pizza, but I'll eat it on a pizza. It's not bad.
Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
Absolutely.
Tonight for you, Drew. It's been really good getting to know you and learning more about how you do what you do. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, people can find my work at district7.com, or if you guys search YouTube for District 7, you can find my channel there, or on Instagram at Drew Giggity.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Grant. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com, also on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne and hope to see you out shooting soon.